I never thought my life would take such a strange and uncomfortable turn. But here I am trying to make sense of it all. A kiss, and we continue. My name is Olivia. What I'm about to share with you is something I've kept secret for a long time. It's a story that changed everything for me, my marriage, and the way I view trust. It all started one night when my husband, Ethan, invited his best friend Behaming over for dinner. Heiss and Vijamil had been close friends for years, long before I met my husband. They were like inseparable brothers. And to be honest, I liked Vijamil. He was charming, funny, and had this way of making people feel comfortable. But that night, something changed in the dynamic. Ethan had been working long hours lately, and although our marriage wasn't in trouble, it felt distant. We had fallen into routines, barely talking some nights because of how tired he was. Benjamin, however, was always there, filling in the gaps that they say he couldn't. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe the signs were there and I ignored them. But I trusted Benjamin. I trusted him completely. That night, after dinner, Isnt got a call from work. Another emergency she had to attend to for a few hours. It was not unusual. Benjamin stayed to help me clean up, chatting as if everything was normal. But as we stood side by side washing dishes in the kitchen, I noticed that the way he looked at me had changed. There was something in his eyes, something I couldn't identify at first. I tried to ignore it. Maybe I was just imagining it. After all, we were friends. We had shared countless scenes and laughed at stories, and there had never been anything inappropriate. But that night felt different. As I finished cleaning up, I realized I hadn't taken a towel from the bathroom. Since they say he wasn't around to help me, I excused myself to go get one. It should have been a simple task, in and out. But as I entered the bathroom and turned on the shower to heat the water for my usual nightly routine, something unexpected happened. I heard footsteps behind me, and before I could register what was happening, Benjamin was there, standing in the bathroom doorway. My heart raced. There was no reason for him to be there. I had closed the door, or so I thought. But there he was, looking at me with a strange expression on his face. "Olivia," he said in a low, firm voice, "we need to talk." A shiver ran down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was the cool air in the hallway or the sudden tension that filled the room. "What is it, Benjamin?" I asked, trying to remain calm even though my mind was full of questions. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a step closer, closing the bathroom door behind him. My heart was pounding, and suddenly the heat of the shower felt suffocating. I leaned against the sink, not knowing what was going on, but sensing that whatever it wasn't good. "I've been thinking," he started, his eyes fixed on mine. "On us." "Us," I repeated, confused and alarmed. "What do you mean us, Benjamin? You're Ethan's best friend. There is no we." But the way he was looking at me told a different story. He wasn't backing down, and the tension between us was thick, too thick to ignore. My mind started racing through all the possible scenarios. Was I interpreting this wrong? She was going through something I didn't know about. Or worse, had I somehow given her the wrong impression? I felt trapped. I was blocking the only way out, and even though nothing had happened yet, the situation felt out of control. "Behaming," I said, my voice a little firmer this time, "I think you should leave." But instead of leaving, she took another step toward me. Olivia whispered, her tone almost pleading. "You know there is something between us. I see the way you look at me when Ethan is gone. You can't deny it." My stomach twisted in knots. This was not happening. I had never seen it that way, not once. Sure, we had had fun together. We had laughed and shared stories. But it was all innocent. I loved my husband, and Benjamin was nothing more than his friend, our friend. "You're completely wrong," I said firmly, trying to sound confident, though my hands were shaking. "Whatever you think, it is not true. I love Isnt." Jamil's eyes darkened, and for a moment I saw a side of him I had never seen before. It wasn't exactly anger, but without frustration, maybe even despair. He reached out and grabbed my arm gently but firmly, as if he was trying to make me see things from his perspective. "We don't have to pretend, Olivia," he murmured. "I know you feel it too." I let go of his grip, my heart beating faster than ever. "Stop it," I said, my voice shaking now. "This isn't right." For a second, I saw the realization cross his face. He realized what he was doing was wrong, but instead of backing away, he hesitated, then nodded slowly and took a step back. "You're right," he finally said, running his hand through his hair. "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." I stood there motionless, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to throw him out of the house and never see him again. But another part, a quieter part, felt a strange mixture of sadness and confusion. How had it come to this? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? When Benjamin finally emerged from the bathroom, I felt a wave of relief, but while I was still shaking from the encounter, Ethan would be back in a few hours, completely oblivious to what had almost happened. And I was left with the question, should I tell him, or should I bury this moment, pretending nothing had changed? I stood there, staring at the closed door for what seemed like an eternity. The sound of the shower water was still echoing around me, but my mind was somewhere else. What had just happened seemed like a dream, a strange and disturbing dream from which I wanted to wake up. Behaming was already gone, and I was alone with my thoughts. My heart was still beating fast, my breathing was shallow, and although I tried to calm myself, the weight of what had just happened crushed me, making it difficult to think clearly. I turned off the shower and sat on the edge of the tub, trying to process it all. Should I tell Ethan? That question kept replaying in my head over and over again. Part of me wanted to be honest, tell him everything, and let him decide how to handle it. But another part that feared the consequences told me to keep it quiet. After all, technically nothing had happened, right? Behamin hadn't done anything physical, but that didn't change the fact that he had crossed a line he couldn't ignore. The sound of the front door opening brought me out of my thoughts. Ethan was home. My heart leapt in my chest, and I immediately felt a surge of anxiety. What was I going to say to him? Could I even look him in the eye, knowing what had almost happened? I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts, as I walked out of the bathroom. "Hi, love," Ethan called as he walked into the living room, leaving his work bag by the door. He looked exhausted, as usual, after a long shift. His eyes met mine, and I forced a smile, even though I felt like I was about to collapse inside. "Hello," I replied, my voice a little shaky. I hoped he didn't notice. He came over and kissed me on the forehead as he used to do with an affectionate gesture. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing that something wasn't right. I hesitated for a moment, searching his face for any sign that he already knew something. But of course he didn't. How could he? I was the only one who knew what had happened in that bathroom, and for a brief moment I thought about telling him, about letting it all come out at once. But something stopped me. "Yes," I answered finally, forcing myself to act normal. "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." Isnt nodded, accepting my answer without question, which was a relief. "I understand," he said with a sigh. "Work has been crazy. I'm sorry I left you alone with Behaming tonight." Just hearing Behaming's name made my stomach twist again. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but inside I felt a surge of anger. Anger at Behaming for putting me in this position, and anger at myself for not knowing how to handle it. Should I have been more assertive? Should I have told him to leave sooner? Questions swirled in my mind, but none had easy answers. Ethan sat on the couch rubbing his temples. "I'm going to take a quick shower, and then go to bed. Is that okay?" To quickly feel not wanting to be left alone with my thoughts. "Sure, that's fine." When he disappeared into the bathroom, the same bathroom where everything had happened just minutes before, I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to run after him to stop him, or tell him the truth before it was too late, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there on the couch, feeling like a stranger in my own home, not knowing what my next move should be. Days passed, and life returned to its usual rhythm, or so it seemed on the surface. Ethan was going to work, we were having dinner together, and everything seemed normal. But deep down, I knew things had changed. Every time I saw Behaman's name pop up on Ethan's phone, I felt a knot in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, like a storm brewing just below the surface. Benjamin hadn't contacted me since that night, which was a relief, but it also left me wondering. Was he regretting what he had done? Or was he waiting for the right time to try again? I didn't know. The uncertainty was consuming me. A week later, Ethan invited Benjamin to spend some time at home. I panicked the moment I heard the invitation. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yes, why not?" Ethan replied, completely oblivious to my discomfort. "He's been very busy with work and I haven't seen him since that dinner. It will be good to catch up." I wanted to scream, to tell him I didn't want Benjamin in our house, but I couldn't. If he said anything, they said he would know something was wrong. If he said anything, they would say he would know something was wrong, and I wasn't ready to have that conversation. So I stayed silent, forcing myself to smile and feel in agreement. The day of Benjamin's visit, I felt nervous the whole time. I couldn't concentrate or relax. Every sound made me jump, and the minutes seemed to pass slowly as I waited for his arrival. When Benjamin finally arrived, everything felt different. His usual charm was still there, but it seemed forced. There was a tension in the air that only I could feel. Ethan, as usual, noticed nothing, laughing and joking with his friend as if nothing had changed. But I could feel the change, the awkwardness that lurked just below the surface. As the night progressed, I found myself avoiding eye contact with Benjamin, keeping my distance whenever possible. I didn't want to give him any chance of misinterpreting my actions, of thinking that what had happened in the bathroom was somehow acceptable. But the more I tried to avoid it, the more uncomfortable the situation became. At one point, Ethan excused himself to take a phone call, leaving Benjamin and me alone in the living room. My heart raced as the door closed behind him, and for a brief moment, the silence between us was deafening. Benjamin cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Olivia began in a low voice about what happened that night. I froze every muscle in my tense body. This was the moment I had been dreading. "I don't know what I was thinking," she continued, her eyes filled with guilt. "I was wrong. I crossed a line, and I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say." Part of me was relieved that I was acknowledging it. But another part was still angry, hurt. "Benjamin," I said quietly to my trembling voice, "you put me in a very difficult position. I trusted you." He felt staring at his hands. "I know, and I'm sorry. I really am. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I just wanted to apologize." For a moment, the tension between us hung in the air, thick and suffocating. But then, as quickly as it had come, it dissipated. I didn't say anything else, and neither did he. When Ethan returned to the living room, everything was back to normal, or at least it seemed that way. But the truth was that nothing would ever be the same again.